Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Alma Talks podcast. And on this episode, we have guest Natasha Ocasio, who's here with me. She's an amazing and a dear friend of mine. And I was just saying that I was getting emotional because I'm just so grateful that she's a part of my life. She's yes, she is a writer, a poet, an artist, and a herbalist. So yes, thank you for being on the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Hey. So I wanted to ask you, how did you start with, I want to say first expression, because I think expression is what led you to spirituality.
Okay. Um, well, I've always felt, and I think this is something that I kind of put into words as I got older in terms of like what my like actual life purpose was just to allow my soul to express itself however it wanted to. And that was a long journey to get to that point because I come from like a background of like really hating myself and really suppressing myself because I come from a lineage of people who've always suppressed themselves and like hate themselves in ways that like maybe not outrightly but say really derogatory and negative things about themselves. So I grew up with that, and that's what I thought was the right way to be and to exist. And I always felt that I had something else that I wanted to express, and I had a different way that I wanted to live my life. And I always expressed myself like through my clothing, and I was in theater and like things like that. And as I got older, I realized that the only way that I would be able to fully be myself is if I had like the courage to do so, and if I like was able to, I guess, unlearn the things that I had learned and really say fuck it to what people thought about me and really just allow what was inside of me to flow outwardly, which is like the whole point of existence, I think.
Yes, yes. And how did you start with poetry?
I always have written since I was little. There's actually like when I was like a baby, my mom like would tell me like that I would just like write in the sky. Like I would just do this. Like when I was little, I
Oh
would
my
just,
God.
yeah. And then she's like, her best friend, like her husband, she's like, yeah, one day he was like, what's wrong with her? What is she doing? And she's like, oh no, she's just writing. Like, and like since I was little, like then when I was like actually able to write and I'd be at my grandma's house, like whenever I'd go to Puerto Rico, they had like a little desk for me. And there was like, oh, what are you doing? I'm like, escribando, like, it was just that was just always what I did. Like even if I wasn't actually writing words, I was just like making like fucking like I don't know, like shapes and stuff. Like so yeah, I've always written in that way. And then once I figured out that words were a thing, I have like journals going back from when I was in like fourth grade. Like so I've always written. And just like this is actually a good time to say this. I think it's like I have like this journal from when I was like in fifth grade. And I like liberation has always been a thing for me in my life. And I've just always had that theme. And then I was like looking back like last year at my journals, and I found that like I wrote about liberation when I was in fourth grade. And like I drew like a butterfly with like chains falling off. And I was just like writing about like freeing, like being free and like just liberation and like allowing your chains to fall off and stuff like that. So like writing has always been that for me, and expression has always been that for me.
That's beautiful. And I guess I want to ask because it's interesting, not really interesting, but the fact that you come from a lineage of people that have talked down to themselves and have kind of contained themselves.
Mhm.
So, would you say that writing and expression through writing, through poetry, through whatever medium necessary is what has helped you be able to break the chains on that in your lineage?
Yeah, absolutely. I think allowing like the things that were weird about me and that like I was made fun of for, or that I felt like made fun of myself for, that I like talked shit to myself about, like I think allowing those things to be at the forefront, like through writing or through dressing, because dressing and like doing my hair and stuff was like a big thing. My mom would always be like, oh, don't do that. Don't wear that. Don't act like that. and like me being like, no, I actually want to wear this. This is what I do, and you say this makes me uncomfortable. So confronting those things both in myself and when they outwardly try to come to me through other people is like how I feel that I was confronting that like lineage of like self-oppression. And it's interesting because the more that I did that, the more I was confronted by my family, directly and indirectly, because I felt that it was like triggering them, and like little by little, like now it's cool, but there is that like initial like mountain that needs to be climbed that is not like easy before you get to the other side, both with yourself and with other people who are trying to like keep you at bay.
Yeah. I feel like in some ways too, it's kind of like them having been told like, hey, you can't wear this, you can't wear that, you need to look a certain way. And it's like part of it, it's like they want you to express yourself in the way that you want, but they're also probably a little salty. It's like, I can't do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And it's like cycles and like people just parroting things that were said to them with no actual foundation. Like if I ask like why, there's no reason why. It's just because no, and that's not a reason for me. So like fuck that. Like like there's no reason for that. Like why can't I wear a lot of colors? Because you don't like it? That's not
Okay.
a the fuck. Just it didn't make yeah, it didn't make sense to me. And I think me asking those questions and like doing that, it's like you have to go first. Like, you know, sometimes you just have to go first and just fucking deal with it. And like whatever comes with going first comes with going first. But after you go first, like everybody else feels cool to go, you know?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel you. Plus you break that and then you allow them to go ahead and follow suit and express themselves the way that they've always wished that they could, they've always wanted.
Mm.
Yeah, I think that's the same way like when I started with cards. My parents didn't even know that I started with cards and I could see auras and all this stuff. And then it's like the moment that I told them slash they found out without me telling them, it's like now they'll be like, hey Ashley, sacame unas cartitas ahí, like pull some cards for me, please. And I'm like, if this was like 5 years ago, 6 years ago, they would have been like, what the are you doing?
Exactly. Yeah. And I felt that about you. Like I was thinking about that like in the card course that I'm in that you're doing. Um just I was thinking about that because I was like, yo, like she really like, because you know, in Puerto Rican culture and in Hispanic culture, like it's a brujeria and that's bad, you know, and stuff. And I was like, yo, she really just went out and did this. And like I saw your sisters in the class too. I thought that was so dope because it's like you really paved the way for that, like by going first. And it's just a testament to going first because somebody has to go, like, fuck, we not all just gonna sit back here. Like, I'm not trying to be back here forever, yo. Like,
No, no. Someone has to path the new way. Someone has to go ahead and create the new path. And it's cute because I work in elementary school and they have this quote on the dining room that's huge. And it says that everything that has ever been has been imagined first.
yeah.
And it's crazy to think it's like, bro, a literal building, this literal house, this was imagined before it was created. This used to be what wood.
Mhm. Was a tree before.
I know it was a tree, it was fucking hammocks, bro, and then now it's like a whole house. Like a computer, obviously, was imagined before it was ever like an actual thing. Something as simple as a cup. People probably use what? Leaves? I don't know. That might sound, I don't know. Anyways, everything's been imagined. Everything was created. Somebody had to take that first step, that courageous first step to be able to get there.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah. So I also wanted to ask you about your poetry specifically, because I think that you have a beautiful gift where I have personally experienced. You used to go to different places and you still do. I don't know why I said used to. You still do this. You go to different places and you come with your little typewriter and your beautiful papers that are like dyed and they are all colorful and stuff because you just add color to anybody's life, honestly, in every single way and shape. Um, and then you just ask the person to give you like a word or two and maybe give you like a little bit of insight. And then you create a poem that I believe, and that I'm pretty sure you also believe, is a channeled message. You're literally a medium through poetry. And when you gave me that poem, when I gave you the words and a little bit of the background, like I cried because it resonated so much. It was exactly what I needed to hear in that moment. I framed it. I still have it framed. It's not hanging on my wall anymore, but it's somewhere in this room framed.
Yeah.
Um, so how did you start with that? And where did that idea come from?
Um, so okay, the first like the catalyst to that, I guess, was when what's his name, Mark Zuckerberg, when he put out his metaverse video. I just thought it was so weird. I mean, I'm kind of anti-metaverse to be honest, because I'm more pro universe. Like I'm more pro in real life. So I feel like I feel like it's dangerous, and I feel like it's dangerous to children specifically, but that's a different thing. But I watched that metaverse video, and it was so weird and robotic to me, and I just had this inkling that like this is like the future, like the future is going to be all like digital, and I felt like I didn't want to be a part of that. So to me, like the opposite of that was going out in real life and doing something that really scared me. And before this, a few days before this, I had seen like, because I was looking up, like I wanted to busk, like I wanted to go out and share things, but I was scared, duh. Like, so I was looking up like how to do it, whatever. And I bought this typewriter like a year or two before, and like for at least 10 years my passwords to everything was typewriter 15, and I just loved typewriters. Yeah. Like, so I bought this typewriter. I'm like, I'm gonna buy a typewriter because I have the money now, I'm working, I have money, and I want to have it. And it just sat there, and then I saw that people had this like movement called Poet for Hire, and it was just a bunch of travelers who would carry around typewriters or just like notebooks and just sit on the street with a sign that said like, give me a word and I'll write you a poem. And I was like, okay, I want to do that. And so the day after I watched the metaverse video, I like went to downtown, and like I like I half-assed it. I didn't go big. I was like, okay, I'm gonna go, but I'm gonna be like small about it, but I'm still gonna go. And I just sat on a bench, and I didn't really have a sign. But when I got there, I was like, okay, I should have fucking made a sign. I should have like gone all in. Like, why was I scared? This is actually fun. So I made like a little bogus sign, and like I had one person come up to me, and like I wrote him a poem, but I was like, I just was making it too much about him, and like I was trying to please what he wanted more than, so I was just trying to allow what he needed to come through me. And then the next day I was like, okay, I'm just gonna go out for real this time. So I had a sign. I think that might have been the day I saw you, or I saw you like either the first time or the second time I went out. I don't remember.
I think it was the second time because when I saw you, you had a sign. You
Okay,
had a
yeah.
sign
So
already. And then like you were sitting next to some dude that you had met from a
that was
previous
the
time.
okay, yeah. So that was the first weekend. So that was that day was the day after I had like half-assed it. So that was like me going all out. And this dude randomly came up to me who was so nice, who was selling things for his grandma who had cancer or something, and he like sat down next to me. But yeah, so that's how I started with that. And then the word thing was just something I picked up from like the Poet for Hire movement, and I was like, okay, yeah, I'll do that too. And I just really wanted it to be more so like what people needed to hear. So I would always do like a prayer and meditation beforehand that was basically just attracting people who needed to hear things for their healing, and using like asking God to use me as a vessel for that. And I had like my candles and stuff, and like when I was doing it at markets, like I don't drink or smoke when I write or anything, because I want to make sure that the channel is like completely clear. I don't want to have any type of interference. But yeah, that's how I got started with it. And I've had like the most beautiful days of my life doing that.
Yeah, I mean it's beautiful. It's validating. You're serving others through something that brings you so much joy
Mhm.
and has brought you healing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And then who was I don't know who was talking about this. I feel like maybe it was you or something, but um one thing I started to notice was that like people would, like if somebody asked, like told me a word, I would have like a line or something in their poem, and then the next person would tell me a word that had to do with their poem. And then like everybody would kind of have like be on the same type of wave in the same day, and
Mm.
everyone kind of feeling the same things. and a lot of the words were recyclable and like interchanged and used in every poem, and some of the phrases would just come out like that, and I was like, wow, everybody is like kind of going through similar things at the same time. And so it was just interesting to like observe that, and that was a thing.
Yeah. And people usually like they don't think of poetry. Well, I might be saying more people than there really are, but I feel like at least for myself, like I would write, but I didn't know what poetry really was. And for me, it was frustrating when people were like, "Oh, let's read a poem like in class in school," because all the poetry that I read when I was in school was Shakespeare. And me, my first language being Spanish, me not being able to speak English correctly or understanding regular English all the time, then you're gonna put me in Shakespeare English language for me to try to figure out what the fucking metaphor is or the allegory of the story or all of this. I'm like, no, I can't. I would be so frustrated whenever we would like talk about poetry because they would only show you one type of poetry. They wouldn't show you the real and the raw emotional stuff that you would get in other poems that are more modern or even in a different expression. But even then, too, like if I think about it, there's some other people that have talked about Shakespeare in a better and more metaphysical way. So I guess maybe it was just my teacher, or maybe it's just the time in my life where I was annoyed. But I I didn't think of poetry as something that would be so healing.
Yeah.
Um, Especially getting a poem done for myself, like that was catered to me.
Mhm. I think that one of the things is like with that is like all of the rules that people try to put on like everything, like art and like expression, like poetry has to have like be metered and have like this sequence, and like it has to rhyme and it has to, but like it doesn't have to do anything. It doesn't have to be any of that. Like it just, to me, poetry is like an elusive way of saying what's going on. Like to me it's just like I could say like the grass is green, or I could say the grass like shimmers with the particles left over that are recycled from the sun, or like some, I don't know, something like that. Like it, or like reflects back the like trees and like is breathing, and like you could say it in so many ways, and it's just like an elusive way to like say what's actually going on. And I think that you can like kind of trick yourself into being real with yourself through poetry,
Mm,
because you don't have to be like, I feel shitty today. You could like say it in a bunch of different ways. And when you read it back, like it's going to have a message for you, because you create space for illusion. And while reading it back, you're reading the illusion and you're creating truth and finding the truth in the illusion. If that makes sense. I don't know if it does, but yeah, I think that there just shouldn't be rules when there comes to expression, because that limits expression and makes you feel as though you can only express in a certain way, which is incorrect.
that's very true. And talking about different types of expression, you're also an ecstatic dance DJ.
Yes.
So what brought you to ecstatic dance?
Dancing, a space for authentic non-judgment, and healing, because dancing is very healing and movement is very healing and music is very healing. And music is I think one of the main ways that like humans can be programmed or are being programmed like actively. And I think that like the best testament is when I went to an ecstatic dance in Colorado one night, when I was over there, and I just didn't feel like standing up anymore. I didn't feel like dancing. I just wanted to like sit down, and at ecstatic dances, people can like, when there's a lot of people can lay down, sit down, do yoga, contact dancing, whatever. And I was just sitting on the floor, and everyone was consciously and lovingly moving around me. No one ran me over. And if I would have gone to the club and I would have been like, I'm tired, I want to sit down, people would have stomped on me. Like no one would have noticed me, because there's so much more going on in that environment. And ecstatic dance is a space for healing. It's conscious. There's no alcohol, there's no drugs. There's like, it's just silence. Like it's just a space for you to be able to move with your body with other people while not being judged. So it's just a very intentional space for healing through movement and music. And like I was just dancing a lot during the period that like that came to be. And I met this person. I always meet people who kind of initiate me into things. And I met this person, and he kind of like was this very free dancer, and we would just go to like different places and dance like at clubs, but like dance like ecstatic dancey, like, and then we would just see like other people like just joining in and like liberating themselves through the movement. And yeah, like that's just really how it came to be. And once that happened, I decided I wanted to like create those spaces and like learn more about that specific like thing, because ecstatic dance has been a thing for a while. A woman like Gabrielle Roth, she has 5 rhythms, and she says that like the body will express itself in 5 specific rhythms, like staccato or lyrical, et cetera, et cetera. And yeah, I just really was interested and fascinated by the ability to create a space, an intentional space for people to heal themselves through expressing their bodies' feelings.
That's a lot of different types of expression. You know, you have the expression of clothing and colors, you have the expression of the way that you color the papers that you utilize for poems, you have the expression of poetry, you have the expression of writing and journaling, you have the expression of movement, you have the expression of music too, because you've created sets for ecstatic dance.
Yes.
So, you know, there's a lot of different types of expression there that you've experienced, experimented with. It was the word that I was looking for. So what else really have you been able to work through as another form of expressing yourself and your authenticity, really?
What else have I worked with?
Yeah.
Um, Anything. Like, I don't believe in limiting myself. I don't believe in limiting anybody to, or like constricting like myself to anything. Whatever I bless you, whatever I
Thank you.
feel, because it's all in service to the soul, right? It's all in service to the experiment that is the human experience, I think. And I think that life is an experiment, and I think that I allow myself to delve in everything that calls to me. Because if not, then I can't, there's really no way for me to figure out what I like and what I don't like if I don't allow myself the leeway to try everything, everything that calls to me. And I've had a lot of people, a lot of people like be like, oh, just say like snarky comments about like that, the fact that I don't limit myself, and the fact that I will like pick up a flute and try a flute, or pick up a drum and try a drum, or like start painting, or like, but that's just really like even more testament to why it's important that we do that, is because we allow people to do that, and like we allow people to think, oh yeah, she was doing all these things, like maybe I can try. Or like just allowing your soul the expression and the freedom to be your soul in this lifetime allows other people the expression and the freedom to be their souls in this lifetime. And it's all in service to the soul, because it's all in service of the universal like consciousness, which is like, I believe, just a network of like souls telepathically communicating with each other.
Yeah, it could be similar to the, I'm gonna say it incorrectly because of my Spanish, but the mycelium network underneath the trees between all of the mushrooms. They're all individual mushrooms. They all have different neurons and neurotic pathways and whatever beneath the roots of the earth, but they all create one gigantic grid that is utilized for all of the trees to communicate.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we are.
Exactly. Yeah. We're just reflections of nature. So, I mean, I've tried like anything, like actually I'm starting to try more like singing, because singing was something that I always loved. And I was that like same inner voice, like I was in chorus like my entire life, and like I was in like group, like choir groups, and like specific like performing groups, and like I was just always telling myself I wasn't good enough and all these things. And so yesterday, like two days ago, like I was walking to look for a place to go busking here in Asheville, and I found this really cool guy, and we were just talking about like breaking through blockages through expression. And he like he just like had me like sing with him, and we were just like singing like on the street, and we did it again yesterday. And like um I always meet that like person who initiates me. So I'm just like waiting to flow with that, because ultimately that's what I want poetry to be, is just like more music. and like conscious music and music that makes people feel happy and good. Because again, I do believe that like sound and music and vibrations is the main way that humans are actively being programmed. And the same type of mentality with the metaverse is the same thing I take with everything. It's like if I see something that I don't feel is good for humanity, I like want to be on the opposite side of the spectrum of that.
Yeah, that makes sense. Because they say how the scale of the earth hertz used to be a specific hertz thing, which was like 432, I think it was originally around that. And then eventually the government, I don't know, conspiracy theories, they changed it to 440 hertz in music, which is not a frequency that is natural in nature versus 432 was. So it's kind of like a little bit of a dissonance to our body and to our existence, and how you can, depending on the underlying vibration and the hertz that are used in different songs, you can create different bodily responses to people, even get them addicted to your music.
Exactly. That's
Yeah.
happening so much right now. Like, yeah. Yeah.
But that's a whole other
I know. I was like,
conversation.
not even.
I was like, I don't know if we can get into that right now. I need to be more prepared for that. But anyways, there's all of the different types of expression that you do are a part of your own personal liberation, and how the underlying thing that connects all of this is just to liberate yourself. And that's a beautiful message because, yes, just like how you said, people are going to meet resistance because that's what they want. And they haven't been able to find the courage within themselves to do that. But you have the courage. You have had the courage to be able to start dressing yourself a certain way, the way that you like. And with that courage, it's helped you go into the next thing. And then it just keeps building up the courage. And that's another thing that people need to remember is that, doing one courageous thing at a time, no matter how big or small, is going to help cascade into the next thing and build your courage to the point where you are just going to become the person you've always wanted to be.
Exactly. I completely agree.
Yes. So, what type of form of expression do you choose to partake in, depending on how you feel? Like, is there like a method or?
Um, no, I think the method is more so observation. Like observation of self,
Mm.
and like observing how I'm feeling, and whatever I feel is what dictates what I do. Like actually yesterday, like I learned a new way of expressing feelings by not, well, by expressing them through just observing them and just listening to them, because I had a lot of feelings and I was like instantly like, okay, I'm gonna write. But words like fall short, and sometimes everything falls short to like what I'm feeling, and like I feel like to what humans are feeling, period. Because again, like these things are all secondary to what the natural language of the soul and of like feeling and emotion and like humanness is, and like cells. So I realized that I just needed to acknowledge that, and I just needed to sit with that. And so I think that I realized that meditation is also a form of expression, because not everything has to be like rapid movement. Expression can also be stillness, and it can also be observation and meditation. So I think it really just depends like how I feel and the extent to which I'm feeling. Some things that are really like serious, I'll have to like move through. And sometimes if I haven't moved in a while, I'll be like, okay, let's move today to kind of get some of the stuff flowing, just because I observe like, again, it has been a while, or I haven't written in a while, I haven't like used this in a while. But I'm really just in service like to my soul and to whatever it is that's going through me at the moment. Um, and I think that the main thing is just being an observer of yourself, and just like being a scientist of self, and constantly being like in question and like observation of like who you are, what you're doing, and what you're feeling. And I think that will really like, and just saying yes to that and not judging that and allowing that to flow however it wants to is like the main thing that I like practice, and I think other people should practice as well, because it's like super beneficial.
Yeah, I love that you said that sometimes meditating or just observing the emotions is another form of expression and integration. Because
Mhm.
you are right. there's times that someone writes something because the moment impacted them so much. But it's like if you were to read it, or read that person's writing, it's probably you're not going to end up feeling probably the intensity of what they felt while they were writing that piece or why they were expressing all of that.
Mhm.
And there's some people too that, not everybody, some people do, right? Writing and expression is a form of healing, but there's a fine line for everything. Sometimes people use this expression things as a way to escape feeling the feeling. So that can be hard sometimes. And it's not everybody, right? I know that for me, writing is very healing, but and it can be very cathartic as well. Maybe sometimes I don't know what I'm feeling, or I'm in a space where it just doesn't make sense. I'm a little down, or I'm just a little like sluggish. And then I start writing, and then it comes up as to what it is that I'm truly feeling behind the scenes that I'm not aware of.
Mhm.
And then at that point, I just sit with it, or I cry it out or whatever. But yes.
Exactly. I think that also like um being reflections of like everything in life, like I think that we can reflect back like the quick paced life that we live in and think that like when something is going on we have to do something else because that's just like what's going on a grander scale. There's not as much stillness and slowness and like just observation for the sake of observation in society. And so I think that that's something that we can bring into society by bringing it into ourselves, you know. I think the initial reaction might just be like, okay, I got to do something about this, but like we don't always have to do something. Like doing something is can also be like just sitting and just observing. Like movement is not always necessary. Sometimes stillness like suffices.
Yeah. It's like when you're cooking, right? You want to keep adding and adding and adding and adding, all of a sudden it's gonna be a really salty chicken that you can't even eat.
Yeah.
Like we don't want to have high blood pressure here, Like so I wanted to ask you another thing too. Would you be comfortable singing a song for us, a beautiful healing song?
Okay. What song? About what? Any
I've
song?
I've heard you sing before, and I think your voice is beautiful.
Thank you.
But yes, any song that you feel like might be appropriate in the moment. I don't want to, contain your liberated expression.
Um, I mean, I guess I can share a song that I wrote while I was in India. I don't know if it's like healing. Well, it was healing for me. Okay, sure, why not? Okay. Only for a moment, only for some time. It's only through these eyes I see what makes this life worthwhile. Only for a moment, only for some time. It's only through these eyes I see what makes this life worthwhile. Floating in the distance, floating between us. Your body are the stars I see, and my arms are the dust. Only for a moment, only for some time. Only through this soul I feel makes this life worthwhile. I messed up the words a little bit there. I just kind of like freeballed it, but I have the notebook. I wrote it in somewhere. But yeah, I wrote that song while I was in India.
That was awesome.
It's like
Next time,
universal.
don't say you forgot the words, bro. I was vibing. I was over here
Really?
like,
You didn't even notice?
no.
Okay, it was like it's supposed to be like universal distance floating between us. Your arms are the stars I see, and my body is the dust. And I just like messed it up. But yeah, that's the general beat. That's the flow to it.
I
And
love it.
and then from there, after you do it a few times, then you just freestyle like whatever else comes out. Like, yeah.
Oh,
Thanks for
that's
the
beautiful.
invitation.
We're getting it. We're having it come out. Yes, love that. Love that. That was beautiful. I'm excited to continue hearing more of, or hopefully to hear you share some of the poems that you write that turn into songs. And
Yeah, I'm actually excited to share that now for the first time in my life.
Again. Now, I did want to also mention how you have had a different path with herbalism, right? So we talked about expression, we talked about different forms of art. And I guess you could also say that working with plants is a different type of expression that's more supportive, it's more internal,
Mhm.
or even creative in the culinary way, right? So, how was your start of the journey with herbalism?
Well, I am a Virgo, and I have Earth. I have so much Virgo and so much Libra in my chart. And I've always felt like I was just a child of the earth. And so I've always been very connected and drawn to nature. I've always had this like desire and like almost it almost feels like a responsibility to like protect the earth and learn different ways to heal her and myself. I just want to clarify like the main reason why I do all these things is not just to heal myself, because I understand, like you understand, and like we all understand who are like actively doing this work, that through healing ourselves, we heal everything else around us. I just want to make sure that that's like clear. Is like every time that we're healing ourselves and every time we're taking these steps to like push forward, it's because everybody else will be beneficially like positively impacted by that, and like including like Mother Earth, including Gaia. Like, but yes, so yeah, I've always had this like connection to the earth. Like I used to like feel like the wind talked to me, and I still feel like that. And so I like started following a vegan diet like when you guys were online, like back in 2016. Yeah, it's been a
Yes,
while.
2016. And I
And
guess online just means we were
oh yeah,
in college
we were
doing
in
things.
college. Yeah,
Anyways.
we were in sorority. We're in a sorority. And yeah, we were going through that sorority stuff. But so I started following a vegan diet. Then I started following like Dr. Sabi, who was a holistic, who he passed away in police custody. Anyways, he was a holistic doctor, and he preached like an alkaline diet, right? And so I started learning about like food and herbs through him. And I started really working with like elderberry a lot. And I just started like researching different herbs and stuff. And this was like back then, but it was just like a passing thing. I wasn't like, okay, I want to dedicate time to this for, I want to commit to learning this. And little by little, like it would just keep coming up. Like people knew that I was like, I guess following a more uh conscious diet and being more conscious about what I eat and looking at ingredients and stuff. And so they would ask me like, oh, I have this, what should I take for this or whatever. I started to like research it a little bit, and like my family, like after criticizing my veganism, would like ask me like different herbs and natural like holistic things to take or whatever. And so I started with that, and like I just always have been very into like self healing and like doing things by myself. That's a whole nother issue, but like people like healing themselves have always been a thing for me. And so I just wanted to learn more about how that could be possible, and about how people could like take back their power to heal and to connect to the earth, because I do believe that like we wouldn't have illnesses if we didn't have cures to them. And I do believe that the body is a self-healing mechanism. But yeah, so yeah, and I would just like little by little start learning more about herbs, and I started like learning more about teas, and I started researching more herbs and learning like that, taking little classes here and there. And then I was like, the same thing that happened with like the calling for India. I was like, what am I gonna do with these next few months of my life? Like I could just work, and for what? Like I don't like the way that I'm working now. I want to do something different. So I started researching like different herbal schools and stuff. And I'm in North Carolina. I'm going to herbal school in Asheville. And I was here like 2 years ago in a place close to here. And my birthday is August 28th. And the area code for here is 828. Like all the phone numbers are 828. I see 828 everywhere all the time. And so I decided I'd come back to North Carolina. And so now I'm in like a dedicated like 6 month like holistic herbalism program. And I feel like I'm exactly where I need to be and what I need to be doing. And it's just the plants are just very healing, and there's so much we can learn from just again observing them, and just not even only ingesting them, but sitting with them and allowing like that same frequency that we were talking about earlier, like the frequency of the plants to heal like our own like electromagnetic fields, and just how that frequency of like cohesion in the plant can also impact our own field, without even ingesting the plant. um but yeah, so that's kind of been like where my journey started, and like where I am now with that.
Which is beautiful. And I'm really excited to see like what is this going to bring to help
Mhm.
support you on your continuing evolution for liberation and expression.
Yeah, so much, because oh yeah, because there's so much that can come, like you can just listening to plants, and again observing yourself. um you'll start to get like intuitive feelings of like this plant will go with this, and like you'll kind of be in the element because you're connected to the like the source of creation, like of our bodies, like. And so in that, like you learn from that, like the ultimate source of creation, like the ultimate reflection of that will teach you how to create things that heal you. And just listening to that, you can mix different things and you can create different concoctions. And like you've delved in this before, and you've made like little sprays and stuff, and it's always been so nice and so beautiful. And like, so it's just like a testament, like if you tune in, like the plants will, they got stuff to say, like they want to help. And just in respect, also like respecting the plants, and like being ethical with them, and like not using them the way we use drugs, and like you know medicine from like allopathic medicinal things. um yeah, it's definitely a different way of healing, and it teaches a lot of devotion and patience.
Yeah, because it's you have to create a habit, you have to create a relationship. It is a different lifestyle.
Yeah, it's not, it teaches you have to slow down. Like you can't be quick with nature. Nature takes its time. Nature has cycles, and it teaches you that, and you have to bow to that, because if not, then you're losing the intention. The essence of herbal medicine is really like in its devotion, and its devotion to the cycles of nature and to the natural way of living and being.
Which I think that's a good point too, that it helps remind us of who we are, that we
Hmm.
are also a part of nature. And I feel like sometimes we forget that we are an animal, that we are a species on this earth, that we do depend on nature in some way, shape, or form. And that sometimes we feel like we have all of this power and we're like, quote unquote, gods, right? In this reality. And it's like, okay, we need to humble ourselves though, because Mother Nature can wipe us out real quick.
Yeah, yeah, for
Mm.
sure.
I can't ever forget. There was one time that you sent me this article on pollen, like bee pollen,
Mm.
and that you were fascinated by its like healing qualities. Do you want to share a little bit about that, maybe?
Sure. I haven't worked with the bee pollen since then, really. But that was just a period of like when everyone was like really scared about COVID, and I was in Puerto Rico and I was with my grandma. So there was like people were putting, like my family was putting this extra pressure on me to be like, oh, COVID. And so I started this herbalist named I have it somewhere there, but Rosemary Gladstar. She's like this really amazing herbalist. Um, like I don't know, she's like really, she's like the grandmother of herbalism. I feel like she just, everybody just knows her and like reveres her, revere. I don't know. But yeah, so that was like one of those things of like calling things in, and like plants coming when you're calling certain things and when you're like looking for certain things. And so I was going around and I was like thinking about bee pollen, and I went to the store and I found it there, and I was like sprinkling it in my food and I was eating it. It started to give me like a little bit of a tingling when I was eating it directly, so I just kept like mixing it in. But it was really just supporting like the type of environment I was trying to create at my grandma's house, in terms of like adding extra nutrients and adding like extra things that will help like with immunity, and like minerals and things of that nature. And then at the same time, like you were reading about like bee shamanism, and it was just like, those types of like that cyclical nature, when you're working with the earth, like it's just cyclical, everything. It just brings you to everywhere that you need to be. It's cool.
Yeah, it's funny. I feel like this happens to us often though. It's like you'll like we'll like part ways for like a little bit and I'll be like, "Oh my God, this reminded me of you." And it's like, "Oh my God, I was thinking about
I
that."
was, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, dude. Oh, like, okay, this is another story. Can I share this story really quick? You have
Sure.
time? Yeah. Okay. I had before I was going to India, I got the flu and I had to change my entire trip. I don't know if I told you that. And because I couldn't get on the plane, I had the flu and I had to change everything. And so that night, well, one of those nights I like had a dream about this plant called Tulsi. And Tulsi is an Indian herb. And I've never heard of Tulsi. I was about to go to India. And so in the dream, there was a baby or a child, and the person was like healing the baby with Tulsi, and the baby had like respiratory problems and what I was going through. And like in the dream, they were like, use Tulsi for these things. And like there were the things that I was going through. And when I woke up, I like looked up Tulsi and I was like, oh shit, like this is perfect. And it was an Indian plant, and it was just crazy because I had never even heard that name before. And I just went to sleep like being sad that I couldn't go to India anymore and wanting to heal. And yeah, so it's just the plant, like just calling in plants and calling in that healing, and like just allowing for that, like going back to like allowing, like not putting yourself in boxes and allowing that ultimate expression to come through you, no matter what the medium or the vehicle is, will always work. If you're aligning with that, it will always work.
That's very powerful to hear too, from you. And I think it's just a testament and a reassurance of your connection as a child of the earth, as a Virgo, as a Libra, right, with Venus and everything, with your connection to nature and plants. Um, because that right there with a plant that you've never heard of speaking to you and coming to you in your dream to help you with what you needed, that reminded me of this woman that I follow. I think her name is Adriana Ayales, who is the creator of Anima Mundi herbals.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah.
And
That's a
I
dope.
heard her, yeah, and I heard her talk about that once, that there was a plant came in her dream that she's never looked at before. And it was the plant came to her in her dream saying, "Hey, do this, mix me with this, da 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 da, for this person." And that's what she did. And then the person got better. So power to you, girl. So with that, I wanted to ask if there is any last comment, message for people who are listening to this that you would like to share today.
Yeah, I would say just encouraging people to take themselves out of whatever boxes their lineage has been existing in for generations, or that they've placed in themselves, or people have placed themselves in, or that society has placed themselves in, and just allowing for freedom of expression to flow through you. And calling that in doesn't have to be like a ritualistic like high type of thing. It can literally just be sitting down in that stillness, observing what you're feeling, and saying that you want to align with the intention of expression, and you want to become a vessel for your soul's expression, and saying yes to yourself more. I think that everybody should incorporate that into their lives little by little. And I encourage everybody to take themselves out of their boxes and take off the limits to their expressions, and try new things, and try the thing that you wanted to do since you were a little kid, because that's really where your purpose will lie and will be found.
I love that. I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that. And thank you also for being on this podcast with me.
Thanks for having me. So proud of you. I'm glad that you're doing this, and I'm glad that you're continuing on your path so bravely and authentically as you do.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. We're Mary's girl. And now thank you to everybody as well that's listening to this episode. I hope that as you're listening to this, you've been able to find some solace and courage in your journey. And whether this is daytime, nighttime, middle of the day, I hope that you have a great rest of your day, of your week, of your month. So thanks for listening. Until next time.
Bye.